What if the most powerful thing you could say was nothing at all? In today's noisy world, it feels like everyone is in a constant competition to be heard, posting every opinion online, defending every choice, explaining themselves to people who may not even care. We've turned life into a performance, hoping for applause in the form of likes, comments, and approval. But the Stoic walks a different path. They don't beg for attention. They don't chase validation, and they don't waste energy explaining themselves to those who have already made up their minds. As Epictetus put it, the more we value things outside our control, the less control we have. This isn't about being cold or distant, it's about knowing where to place your energy. Silence, in the Stoic sense, isn't a void, it's a conscious choice. It's discipline. It's self-respect. It's the inner strength to say, I don't need to be heard by you to hear myself. That kind of silence is unsettling to people who are used to emotional reactions. They expect you to fight back, to explain, to prove yourself. But when you choose silence, you take away the tools they use to control the conversation. They're left with their own actions, their own guilt, and the reality of your absence. Imagine a colleague wrongfully blamed in a meeting. Instead of firing back defensively, they simply note the accusation and quietly follow up later with undeniable evidence. Or picture someone leaving a toxic relationship without the dramatic farewell, just a quiet, firm exit that leaves the other person wondering what went wrong. These moments carry a weight that words can rarely achieve. We've been taught to speak our truth and to never stay silent in the face of disrespect. But the Stoics understood something deeper. Not every battle is worth fighting, and not every audience is worth addressing. Sometimes the highest form of strength is the ability to walk away without a single word, knowing your value is not up for debate. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop giving others the power to decide your worth. You begin to direct your energy toward what truly matters, your growth, your peace, and your purpose. And in that space, you become unshakable. In this video, we're going to explore 8 profound truths about the power of silence, why those who master it never chase, never beg, and never explain. By the end, you'll understand why silence isn't weakness, it's control. And you'll see how, in the right hands, saying nothing can speak louder than 1,000 words. Part 1. Not explaining yourself is the highest form of confidence. True confidence is when you no longer feel the need to explain yourself to those who have already decided what they want to believe. We often think that defending our name or proving our side will win people over, but more often it drains our energy and ties our worth to someone else's approval. Marcus Aurelius put it plainly, do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about your neighbors. In other words, your time is too precious to spend trying to manage someone else's perception of you. Explaining yourself to a closed mind isn't strength, it's fear. It's the fear of being misunderstood, the fear of losing control over your image. But here's the truth. If someone has already made up their mind about you, no amount of words will change it. And if they haven't, your actions will speak far louder than any defense you could give. I think of a man named David, a quiet but dedicated worker. One day, rumors began to spread in his office that he had mishandled a client account. People whispered. A few even confronted him with suspicion in their tone. The old David might have pulled each person aside, explaining the situation over and over, trying to clear his name. But this time he didn't. He kept his focus on the project at hand, delivered it flawlessly, and let the results do the talking. Weeks later, the truth came out. and those who mattered saw him for exactly who he was, capable, disciplined, and unshaken. This is the essence of Stoic confidence. You don't waste energy correcting false narratives when you could be building the reality you want to live in. You stop feeding the drama with explanations and start reinforcing your character through consistent action. It's not that you don't care, it's that you care more about your peace than about pleasing those who misjudge you. When you hold this kind of presence, something changes. People who respect you won't need a long speech to understand your silence. They'll see it in the way you carry yourself, in the way you meet challenges without flinching, in the way your work and your integrity align without you having to point it out. There's a saying, a lion doesn't turn around when a small dog barks. That's the spirit here. You know your worth. You know your truth. You know that the ones who truly value you will see it without you having to spell it out. And in that quiet refusal to defend what is already solid, you show a strength that explanations could never match. Part 2. Your silence makes them feel your absence more than hear your words. There's a strange paradox in human relationships. The less you chase, the more they notice. When you stop explaining, stop justifying, and stop running after people, something shifts. Your absence starts to speak louder than anything you could have said. Elbert Hubbard captured it perfectly. He who does not understand your silence will probably not understand your words. And that's the truth. If someone can't grasp the meaning behind your quiet, no explanation will make them see your worth. We live in a world where constant communication is expected. If you don't respond right away, people notice. If you don't show up, people ask questions. But here's the thing, when you're always available, always ready to defend yourself or mend the gap, your presence becomes ordinary, even taken for granted. It's only when you step back that people realize the weight you carried in their lives. I think of Melissa, a woman who had a close friend she deeply valued. They had a falling out, a sharp exchange of words that left both sides tense. Melissa, like many of us, initially tried to repair things quickly. She sent texts, she followed up with calls, she poured her feelings into long messages, explaining her side and hoping to be understood. But the other person stayed silent. Finally, Melissa decided to stop chasing. Days turned into weeks. And then, out of nowhere, that friend reached out, not with anger, but with a softened tone, ready to talk. The absence had done what the words couldn't. Silence does more than remove noise. It forces the other person to confront themselves. Without your messages filling the space, they have to sit with their own thoughts, their own actions, their own role in what happened. Sometimes they realize they have lost something valuable. Other times they simply fade away, revealing that the connection was one-sided all along. Either way, you get clarity without having to push for it. The Stoics understood this dynamic well. They knew that chasing people for validation or understanding puts your peace in their hands. By choosing silence, you take back that control. You let your dignity stand on its own, and you send a message that no amount of words could match. I value myself enough not to beg for what should be freely given. So the next time you feel the urge to explain yourself endlessly or run after someone who's pulling away, remember this: your silence might unsettle them, confuse them, even frustrate them, but it will always reveal more than your words ever could. And in that quiet, you hold the power. Part 3, silence reveals what words try to hide. Words are powerful, but they can also be deceptive. People can say what sounds right, offer the perfect apology, or craft a convincing story, yet their actions may tell a very different truth. That's why silence is such a powerful tool. You can hide behind words, but you cannot hide behind consistent behavior. Ralph Waldo Emerson put it perfectly. What you do speaks so loudly that I cannot hear what you say. When you choose silence, you create space for patterns to emerge. Without the noise of constant back and forth, you can watch how people behave when they no longer have your attention. Do they reach out because they value you, or do they disappear because they only valued what you gave them? I think of Anthony, a man who spent years in a circle of friends where he was always the one making plans, offering help, and checking in. One day he stopped, not in anger, just to see what would happen if he stepped back. Weeks passed. A few friends called to ask how he was doing, surprised by his sudden quiet. Others, the ones who had benefited from his constant effort, never reached out at all. Anthony didn't need an argument to know the truth. Their absence said everything. Silence strips away the illusions that words can build. People may say they care, but caring is shown in presence, not promises. They may swear they'll be there for you, but if they vanish the moment you stop chasing, that's your answer. And the beauty of this is that you don't have to confront anyone or demand explanations. You simply observe. The Stoics understood this deeply. They didn't judge a person by what they claimed to be, but by what they consistently did. Silence gives you the clarity to see who values you without being prompted, who respects your boundaries without needing a reminder, and who only shows up when there's something in it for them. When you learn to trust what people show you rather than what they tell you, you stop falling for empty words. You stop being swayed by charm, flattery, or well-crafted excuses. And most importantly, you start valuing your energy enough to spend it only where actions match intentions. So remember this. Words may dress the part, but actions always play the lead role. In your silence, the truth will surface, not because you demanded it, but because it can no longer be hidden. And once you see it, you can choose with confidence who truly deserves a place in your life. Part 4, begging for closure is a form of self-betrayal. We all crave closure, that final conversation, the clear explanation, the moment when someone finally admits what they did and why. It feels like it would set us free. But here's the hard truth. If someone truly cared, you wouldn't have to beg for closure. They would give it to you willingly, out of respect. And if they don't, your silence is the closure. Epictetus said it best. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Begging for closure is dangerous because it ties your healing to someone else's decision. You're essentially saying, I can't move on until you give me permission. That's giving away your power. And too often, the person you're asking for closure from has already made peace with hurting you. They've moved on. You're the one still holding the wound open, hoping they'll stitch it shut. I think of Samantha, who went through a painful breakup. She poured her heart into a long email, pages of explanations, reflections, and pleas to be understood. She waited for a reply that never came. At first, she felt even more broken. But in that silence, she realized something. Closure doesn't come from their words. It comes from your decision to stop waiting. That realization was the beginning of her freedom. The truth is, chasing closure can actually keep you trapped in the very pain you're trying to escape. You replay the conversations in your head, searching for the perfect way to express yourself. You convince yourself that if you just explain your side clearly enough, they'll see your worth. But most of the time, you're explaining yourself to someone who has no intention of listening. Real closure is this. You accept that what they gave you was all they could give, even if it wasn't enough. You stop expecting a different ending from the same person. You decide that your peace is more valuable than your need to be understood. And in that moment, your self-respect breathes again. The Stoics understood that dignity is found in walking away quietly, not in extracting a final confession. You don't need them to understand your worth. You do. You don't need them to acknowledge the loss. They'll feel it in your absence. And you don't need to reopen the door just to get an explanation. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Not out of spite, but out of a deep understanding that your healing is your responsibility. Closure isn't something they give you. It's something you give yourself, and no one can take that away. Part 5, silence is the mirror that reflects people's true nature. Silence is more than the absence of words. It's a test. When you stop filling the space with explanations, reassurances, and constant effort, you give people the chance to show you exactly who they are without your influence. Actions become the language, and in that language, truth is impossible to fake. When you're always the one checking in, offering help, or keeping the connection alive, it's easy to believe that a relationship is mutual. But what happens when you stop? Who still shows up when you're not the one initiating? Who respects your boundaries without being reminded? Who disappears the moment you're no longer giving? That's the mirror silence holds up. It reflects the reality you might have been avoiding. Mark learned this lesson the hard way. He had a friend who was always venting, always in crisis. Mark would spend hours listening, giving advice, and finding solutions. But he began to realize the friendship felt one-sided. So he decided to stop offering advice unless it was asked for. He didn't make a dramatic announcement, he simply pulled back. In a matter of weeks, the calls stopped coming. The friend who once needed him daily suddenly vanished. That's when Mark saw the truth. The connection wasn't built on mutual respect, but on what he provided. Silence is a filter. It separates the people who value you for who you are from those who value you only for what you give. It's not about cutting people off out of pride. It's about creating enough space for authenticity to reveal itself. And sometimes that revelation is uncomfortable. You might discover that someone you thought was close only stayed because of the benefits you offered. The Stoics understood that energy is precious, and they chose to spend it where it mattered. They didn't rely on promises or sweet words. They observed patterns. They knew that silence removes the performance and leaves only the truth. When you let silence do the work, you save yourself from chasing relationships that were never real in the first place. You stop mistaking noise for connection, and you learn a powerful lesson. Genuine people won't disappear when things get quiet. They'll lean in closer. The rest, let them drift away. Your life will be lighter without the weight of pretending those ties were stronger than they truly were. In the end, silence is not a punishment. It's a mirror. And once you see the reflection clearly, you can decide who truly belongs in your life. Part 6, in silence you hear the truth more clearly. Silence isn't just the absence of noise. It's the presence of clarity. When you step back from the constant chatter, from the urge to explain and defend yourself, you create the space needed to separate emotions from values. And in that space, you protect your dignity and your peace. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." In other words, your perspective, not the event, decides how deeply you suffer. When emotions are raw, after betrayal, loss, or disappointment, The instinct is to seek answers from others. You want to talk it out, to get validation, to hear someone explain why they did what they did. But in the noise of those conversations, you often miss the voice that matters most, your own. Silence quiets the outside world so you can listen to your inner one. Take Rachel, for example. She discovered a deep betrayal from someone she trusted. The old version of herself might have confronted them immediately, demanding explanations, trying to make sense of the hurt. Instead, she chose a different path. She didn't call. She didn't send a message. She spent her mornings reading and her evenings in meditation. And slowly, truths began to surface, truths she had ignored for years. She realized there had been red flags all along. She wasn't angry because they left. She was angry because she had stayed too long. That's the gift of silence. It's not passive, it's intentional. It gives you the chance to step away from the storm so you can see the sky again. It helps you recognize which thoughts are driven by fear and which come from your deepest values. When you stop reacting and start reflecting, you stop letting others dictate the story in your mind. The Stoics practiced this deliberately. They didn't rush decisions in anger or make choices in the heat of the moment. They embraced stillness before action, knowing that the right move often reveals itself only after the emotions have settled. In a world that pressures you to respond instantly, choosing silence is an act of strength. It says, I won't let my emotions make promises my values can't keep. And in that stillness, the real answers about who you are, what you want, and what you will no longer accept become impossible to ignore. Silence doesn't just protect your peace, it teaches you where it truly comes from. Part 7, Silent Detachment, teaches the real lesson. There is a certain kind of power in walking away without a scene, without a speech, without even a final message. It's a lesson far more effective than any argument you could deliver. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." And that's exactly what happens when you detach in silence. You leave the other person alone with their thoughts, their guilt, and the weight of your absence. When you react loudly, people can focus on your words, your tone, or your anger. They can deflect, argue, or convince themselves that your emotions are the problem. But when you say nothing, there's nowhere for them to hide. They're forced to sit with what they did and the reality that you are no longer giving them access to your time, your energy, or your life. Jason understood this. A friend he had once trusted deeply sent him a message filled with insults and accusations. The old Jason might have fired back, defending himself point by point, maybe even escalating the conflict. Instead, he read the message once, put his phone down, and quietly blocked the number. No explanation, no warning, just an exit. Days turned into weeks, and that friend eventually realized there would be no second chance, no chance to re-enter Jason's life. The silence spoke for him. I don't stay where I'm not respected. This is what makes silent detachment so powerful. It shifts the dynamic entirely. You're no longer playing their game, no longer feeding the drama with your presence. You reclaim your peace and let your absence be the statement. The people who value you will feel that void and reflect. The ones who never did will simply drift away, proving you were right to walk. The Stoics practiced this not out of coldness, but out of discipline. They understood that real change doesn't come from lecturing someone. It comes from the moment they lose something they thought they could take for granted. And if they don't learn the lesson, that's okay. The lesson was never for them. It was for you. Choosing to detach in silence is choosing your dignity over their validation. It's refusing to keep explaining storms to people who live indoors. And once you do it, you'll realize that you didn't need the last word. You needed the last action. Walking away quietly is that action. It's the moment you stop giving them the power to hurt you and start giving yourself the freedom to heal. Part 8. Silence helps you keep control of your emotions and the outcome. Silence isn't about weakness, it's about control. When you choose not to react immediately, you give yourself the gift of time. Time to think. Time to see the bigger picture. Time to decide whether your next move will build the bridge or burn it down. In moments of conflict, a hasty reaction can destroy your credibility, damage relationships, or trap you in a fight you never needed to have. But silence creates a buffer between stimulus and response. And in that space, you reclaim your power. Think of Linda, who found herself in an uncomfortable situation during a company meeting. Her boss misunderstood a project update and, in front of everyone, implied she had made a serious mistake. The room went quiet and all eyes turned to her. She could have defended herself right there, fueled by frustration and embarrassment. Instead, she took a breath, stayed silent, and let the meeting move on. Later, she gathered the facts, prepared a clear report, and sent it directly to her boss, calmly proving the truth without a single heated word. The result, her reputation remained intact, and the situation was resolved without unnecessary drama. Silence doesn't mean you're ignoring the problem. It means you're refusing to let emotions dictate your strategy. When you react in anger, you give the other person control over your behavior. When you pause, you keep that control in your own hands. You move from being reactive to being intentional. The Stoics mastered this discipline. They understood that the strongest person in the room is rarely the one speaking the loudest. It's the one who listens, observes, and waits until they can respond from a place of clarity rather than impulse. This is not just self-control, it's tactical patience. You choose your moment, and when you do speak, your words carry weight because they come from truth, not from the heat of emotion. In today's world, where everything is instant replies, instant outrage, instant opinions, choosing silence feels unnatural. But that's why it's so powerful. It makes you stand out as someone who doesn't get pulled into every wave of chaos. It signals maturity, strength, and confidence in your own judgment. So the next time you are faced with a misunderstanding, an insult, or a moment of public embarrassment, remember Linda's example. Resist the urge to fire back. Hold your ground. Let silence protect you until you can act with intention. Because in that stillness, you not only keep control of the situation, you keep control of yourself. And that is where real influence begins. You don't have to chase, beg, or explain yourself to prove your worth. The Stoic way is not about being cold, it's about being clear. It's not about distancing yourself from people, it's about mastering your emotions so that they serve you, not control you. Silence is not weakness, it is control. It is the quiet confidence of knowing that your value doesn't disappear when you're no longer in the room, that your presence still carries weight even in your absence. Every time you choose not to react, you're building something far greater than the satisfaction of winning an argument. You're building peace of mind. Every time you walk away with your dignity intact, you're strengthening a kind of self-respect no one can take from you. And each moment you choose stillness over chaos, you're reinforcing an inner power that outlasts any fleeting victory. Remember this, The people who truly value you will never require you to exhaust yourself proving your worth. And those who don't see it, your silence will speak for you. Let it be the final word, not out of pride, not out of spite, but out of an unshakable respect for yourself. If you've listened this far, it means part of you already knows that silence can be your strongest weapon and your greatest shield. So take this as your reminder. You are not obligated to attend every battle you're invited to. Your time, your energy, your peace, they are yours to protect. And when you guard them with intention, you'll find that the right people will respect you more, not less. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to reflect on where in your life you've been giving away your power through over-explaining or chasing validation. Then commit to one small act of silence this week, not as avoidance, but as a conscious choice to keep your peace. And if you're ready to keep growing stronger in this mindset, subscribe for more Stoic truths and share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Your silence may just be the lesson they never forgot.